Please welcome her with a loud salawat, Sister Nicole Correri.
My dear brothers and sisters, peace be upon you all, peace be upon all of those who are passing by, our fellow brothers and sisters in humanity. I bid you peace. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyana wa habiba qulubana wa tabiba nafusana bil Qasim Muhammad. I want to begin this short speech in the manner of the Ahlulbayt. It is always their tradition to begin any type of discourse, whether it be a speech to encourage, to educate, or whether it be speaking out against injustice. It always begins with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, this comes from the second sermon in Nahj al-Balagha of our beloved Imam Ali alayhi salam. I praise Allah, seeking completion of His blessing, submitting to His glory and expecting safety from committing sins. I invoke His help, being in need of His sufficiency of protection. He whom He guides does not go astray. He with whom He is hostile gets no protection. How relevant for our discussion today. He whom He supports does not remain needy. I stand witness there is no God but Allah, the One. He has no like. My testimony has been tested in its frankness, and in its essence is our belief. We shall cling to it forever while we live, and shall store it for facing the tribulations that overtake us, because it is the foundation stone of belief and the first step toward good action and divine pleasure. It is the means to keep shaitan away. I also stand witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Allah has sent Muhammad as His slave and prophet. Allah sent him with the illustrious religion, effective emblem, written book, effulgent light, sparkling gleam, and decisive injunction in order to dispel doubts, present clear proofs, administer warning through signs, and to warn of punishments. At the time, people had fallen in vices whereby the rope of the religion had been broken. The pillars of belief had been shaken. Principles had been sacrilege. System had become topsy-turvy. Openings were narrow, passage was dark, guidance was unknown, and darkness prevailed. This is a sermon of Imam Ali, but look how relevant it is today. Those words certainly fit with what we are facing with the Wahhabi ideology and the proponents of that ideology, the Saudi Arabian royal family. Today we confirm what Imam Ali alayhi salam has said to us. He says, Allah was being disobeyed, Satan was given support, and belief had been forsaken. As a result, the pillars of the religion fell down. Its traces could not be discerned. Its passages had been destroyed, and its streets had fallen into decay. People obeyed Shaitan and treaded his paths. They sought water from his watering places. Through them, Shaitan's emblems got flying, and his standard was raised in vices. And then the people stood on their toes, full of vices, and the people immersed in these actions, they strayed. They became perplexed, ignorant, seduced. They were in a land where the learned were in bridle, meaning they were kept with their mouths shut. But we are not like that. We will not remain ignorant. We want to be among those Imam Ali calls honored, those who open their mouths. We unbridle ourselves and we speak out for justice. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I want to share facts with you, because what we're talking about, as you heard from Sister Tanya's speech, is not an issue that is exclusive to our Shia community. It is a worldwide threat. Fact, UNESCO has a system of protecting world cultural and natural heritage sites around the world. This is a document that was created in the 70s to establish that the deterioration or disappearance of any item of the culture or natural heritage constitutes a harmful impoverishment of the heritage of all the nations of the world. This is what they established. Furthermore, they said that the parts of the cultural or natural heritage that are of outstanding interest and therefore need to be preserved as part of world heritage belong to mankind as a whole. Belong to mankind as a whole. And in view of that, they say that the magnitude and gravity of any dangers threatening them, it becomes incumbent upon the international community as a whole, to participate in the protection of the cultural and natural heritage that belongs and has universal value to all of humanity. Now, currently, the Director General of UNESCO, and why is it important that we reference this today? Because our issue is universal. It belongs to all people, and it is one that we must call upon other agencies and other organizations to take up as well. They are concerned about these very same things. Currently, Irina Bokova, again, who is the Director General of UNESCO, says that the destruction of a city in Iraq near Mosul called Hatra, just this March of 2015, by the Islamic State, marks a turning point in the appalling strategy of cultural cleansing underway in Iraq. And that cultural cleansing does not stop there. It is all throughout Iraq. It is all throughout Saudi Arabia. It has been practiced by the House of Saud since the 1920s and before, with the destruction of Al-Baqee. Now today, in July, this very month, 2015, UNESCO has this to say. They said, since the beginning of the conflict in Iraq, in addition to the tragic loss of life, the humanitarian crisis, and the persecution of cultural and religious minorities, and the destruction of cultural heritage has been the target of these groups. And their aim is erasing the history of the country and thus undermining the peaceful coexistence of diverse communities. What the message we must understand and we must convey to our fellow citizens is that this country, Saudi Arabia, their intention is to do this very destruction of cultural and religious identity that affects everyone. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This systematic destruction undermines the value of tolerance and civil society. Now, Saudi Arabia is considered an ally of the United States, but this is their agenda, to undermine tolerance, to destroy civil society. And I have said before, and I repeat again today in this forum, and I will say it again and again until the message is understood, that U.S. does not have values that are the same as Saudi Arabia. We do not have shared cultural values. Saudi Arabia does not believe in civil society. They do not believe in rule of law. They do not follow means of justice, nor do they explore or implement tolerance within their nation. And we can see that through this decisive destruction coming from the Wahhabi ideology that they fund and support en masse. This cultural heritage, this religious identity exemplified in these heritage sites is so significant. Why? Because it is tied to our identity as Muslims. And likewise, all cultural heritage globally is tied to humanity's collective identity. Yes. And if it is destroyed, you bring open the way for shaitan. You bring open the way and you lead the way for destructive ideology to take the place. Now, I want you to know that even today, watching cable channel called Awe, I saw this amazing commercial. I thought, how perfect is this? And this was the words, as beautiful scenery was shown of global heritage, the pyramids in Egypt, the observatories in India, the Mount of Kilimanjaro, the Pacific coastline, the Great Reef, all of these sites globally. And what did it say in this commercial? SubhanAllah. And why am I saying it to you? Again, this message is global. this message is on the minds of all decent citizens around the world. They said in every corner of the world exists some of the most cherished monuments, from natural sites from the farthest of the eastern world to the edges of the western world. They serve as testaments to the ingenuity of human civilization and the beauty of the natural world. And they must all, at all costs, be protected. World heritage. This is the message that all Americans are seeing, and this message we have today belongs to them as well. Now imagine, here we are in the capital of Washington D.C., the capital of the United States of America. There are some revered heritage sites right within our nearby walking distance. The Washington Monument, for example. Can we, as American citizens, and I call upon anybody listening to this discussion, this speech, would you ever tolerate anyone targeting the Washington Monument? No. The Lincoln Memorial, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous speech for equality, would you tolerate that being targeted? No. Would you tolerate the Jefferson Memorial being targeted? Absolutely not. Would you destroy this Kennedy Center that exists here to perpetuate culture and art? Would we tolerate that? Absolutely not. Now, we're also nearby National Cemetery, Arlington National Cemetery, where the heroes of all American wars are laid to rest. And every day, 24 hours a day, every day of the year, in the cold, in the heat, in the rain, there are soldiers who stand guard over the tomb of the unknown soldier. The unknown soldier in this country deserves protection day and night. What about revered spiritual figures within the tradition of Islam? Do they not deserve to be guarded day and night? Do they not deserve to have a flame that is lit and it memorializes them indefinitely? Do they not deserve to have a beautiful memorial of marble that is beautiful and well taken care of, just as we accept here for our unknown soldier to honor their sacrifice? Now go to the level of some individuals who are sent by God himself to guide humanity. They deserve this same and more. And I call upon all people of conscience, all people who are devout, all people who share the values of tolerance and humanity to speak out against this injustice. We, as believers in the family of the Prophet, are commanded to revere them. It says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. صل على محمد وعلى. We must show our beloved family of the Prophet that we are here to protect their resting spaces, that we want to honor where they are buried, and not only that, they are the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we must honor them as Allah has commanded by giving our love and devotion to them in every possible way. Now, Saudi is in particular at the center of this destruction. It is their mission to destroy this religious heritage. And according to the Washington-based, right here in DC, Gulf Institute, Saudi authorities have destroyed nearly 95% of all historical relics and buildings within the holy city of Mecca alone. Imagine now Medina as well. Since 1985, they've been reporting this. 95% of these sacred religious sites, these heritage sites, have been destroyed by this government purposefully to eradicate the identity of Islam. It has to be underscored that the graves of religious figures and revered figures, a sacred heritage site that the Shias particularly revere, have been the most targeted. And we cannot deny that despite all the other destruction we've heard about throughout Iraq and Saudi and so forth, it is the Shia who are the primary victims of this aggression. We must remember, without a doubt, that this destruction and this ideology, which is so severe in its behavior, so animalistic and so destructive, has known no other like this historically. Remember today that without our history, we do not have an identity, and we must preserve our history. We must recognize as well that when these factors, that these signs of our identity, these religious heritage sites, these traditional places of worship and so forth are destroyed. It paves the way for an ideology to come in and change the mind, because if you don't know where you've come from, you won't know where you're going.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is how ISIS and all of these extremist terrorist groups operate. They actually recruit individuals. For example, in the book written by Ahmed Rashid, who's a Pakistani author, he wrote this book called Taliban. I want to read this quote to you as I finish, because it's extremely important to understand how leaving the door open for this aggressive ideology is what destroys identity. He found that the Taliban recruits specifically orphaned refugee young men between 14 and 24. They immerse them in this extremist ideology, and the mullahs that are doing this teaching are illiterate themselves. Ultimately, what do they end up doing? They create mindless individuals who have no sense of identity and no sense of their history or place in civil society. And that's how they gain their power. They take these young minds, they remove them from all their connections to society, to history, to religious tradition, and they infiltrate with their aggressive ideology. We cannot allow this to happen. So remember that we must recognize that we are all victims of this intolerant, violent, and destructive ideology that is supported by the House of Saud and supported by the Wahhabi ideology, and that we must stand to protect decent, tolerant, civilized, and humane structures, whether they are literal or figurative. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.